So this season, I've painted a couple of these flower paintings. This is probably more paintings of flowers than I've ever done in my life, but I've been enjoying them, and we are having an incredible season this year for gardens in Montreal. So yes, I thought I would do one more, and this time record the whole thing, so I can give you a good video of the process from beginning to end. So that's the reference photo. It's one of Laurel's snapshots of roses, and I'm doing this thing that I've been doing, the very high key flowers on a dark background. So what's the first step? Looking for the shadow shape of the flower. So that, I mean, it's basically each flower head is kind of this cup shape, or you could think of it as a sphere, the lower half of a sphere. So painting any kind of rounded object, you have sort of a curved shadow side on the bottom and a lit surface on the top. And being that we're doing this directly, I'm looking to draw the shadow shapes and imagine where's the white that has to be left over. So it's a very interesting kind of a delayed gratification. You won't really see the shape of the flower until you draw the background, right? The white that draws the edge of the petals is going to be left behind as you go. Yeah. So I've made these little. Here's the first bit which will illustrate that process. So I made a couple of those tick marks to indicate for myself where is the edge, and then this little red shape, whatever it is, it's another flower back there that's out of focus in the background. That's the first piece of really drawing the edge, and I think it's pretty neat about how you just draw one little piece of the background and I can already start to see the curvature of the flower. Like I can imagine how I'm going to draw that whole upper arc. So, yeah, you'll see how this works hopefully it'll become more clear as we advance. So, yes, that was nice. I like that little spike, that little detail that I'm noting that down now so I don't lose it when I cut around the flower. Okay, on to the next flower. So you have the larger flower is like the hero of the story. That's the main piece. And then I'm going to have the rest of the bouquet. So this next one is done more directly, just a simple shape. I injected a little color into those petals, but it's just a simple shape. And then I move around and catch all the other kind of dashes of color that are in the background. So as you are going away from your main subject, you can be less and less kind of fiddly, right? I'm going to have other flowers back there, but they don't matter as much. So I just sped through the production of those, and there it is. That's the colored place markers where each of these flower heads are going to be. So that's established, and then next thing is to move on to the background. So in this case, I began drawing the outside edge of the flower, just like with that first little red patch. Now I'm looking for individual leaves or pieces of the background that I can sort of move like a clock around my flower head and put little place markers. I don't want to go, why don't I just go right into the background? Well, I'm looking for which leaves, like individual leaf shapes that I'm going to draw well, precisely, because they have compositional element to them, or I'm picking them out from the mass of the leaves that's there because they describe the form the best. So I want to get these little bits of stem or pointed arrow shape, sharp points on the tips of the leaves, get those in place now so that I will cut around them later. And then here we are starting to really draw an edge. Then this is, 10, 15 minutes into the painting, and that flower begins to take form for real. So the rest of it is going to be the fun part for me, where I get into the more abstract painting. Once you've drawn your central element and the silhouettes have been sealed, as it were, right? I've closed the broken silhouette by getting around that flower. So now I get to play with that out of focus, green on green kind of darkness of the background, right? Though here I'm cutting another flower head. So see how I go around the figure looking for sharp edges and actually being fairly careful as I'm right up close to the edge, but fairly broad as you move away, right? So using the tip of the brush to draw a nice sharp edge around that red bloom, and then the side to do some big fills. That's going to be that's sort of the theme of cutting, is like careful where you need to be, then immediately broad as you pull away from the object. Here I've even switched up to a larger brush to fill this big chunk of the background. And I enjoyed this piece, like that bit where it goes from the detail stuff to the broad work. It really speeds up and you get a big chunk of it done all at once. It's kind of fun. You know, it's not just that I enjoy painting quickly, which I do, but it's also that you need to speed up so that you can fill that whole area and keep it wet all at once, right? You want the idea of fusing shapes, like we're working wet on dry. The idea is that you have to get to the closed shape, so before it dries, so that it'll fuse together inside. The color will blend seamlessly inside the shape, because you want a hard edge on the outside, but you don't want hard edges inside each of these passages. So if you slow down too much, that's what will happen, is you start to develop internal edges where you don't want them. So yeah, so that's why always the biggest possible brush. Even though I have been going and doing some fiddly detail in those inner shadows, but generally that's why always the biggest possible brush. And what did I just do? I cut around those kind of a lighter, two big white shapes beside my main bloom, knowing that I would fill them again. I just put in those interesting scarlets, and here I'm doing it again. I cut around some of the out of focus background shapes so that I could come back and inject color into them. So I used quite a bit of scarlet, and here's this is the purling green, which is a dark, almost black green. So I want to be able to do those very wet, edge against edge, so they flow into each other. And each patch of this color is going to knit with the one before. Anyway, here in this corner, I've been making this kind of blobby cube, which I sort of got into making an interesting outer edge. And I had to deviate around that upper corner so that I could enclose that flower head. I don't know if you noticed way back at the beginning of the painting, I had drawn some little spikes around the edge of that flower. And there they are. They're still there. Like I had said, I was going to leave some of these outer details to remind myself, so that when I'm cutting, I don't lose them, right? The cutting around the thing, sometimes you'll ruin your outer contour, right? You've got to leave yourself some little clues so that you don't lose that imaginary contour that was in your head. Now, I should say, I have been speeding up portions of this video. I talked about painting quickly, but I did use a lot of double speed on this recording just to get through some of the repetitive stuff. I mean, each of these flowers is painted the same way. And this kind of stuff where I am coming right up to the edge and just pick little tiny touches with the tip to draw a sharp edge. I'm actually going pretty slow here, so yeah, so I have speeded up some of this video. So you go slow when you need to draw a line, when you need to make two edges meet perfectly, and then you go fast when you're filling shape. So that is it. I quite like that this upper flower that's even a simpler shape. I actually like it better than the main hero. But anyway, that's it. Scraping was the final details to just pick out the brightest whites along a few sharp edges, and that's the whole thing. That's the whole deal. Light object on dark background. Yeah, very abstract filling of the shadow shapes, and letting the water merge. If you can see the silhouettes, and just leave your whites behind and let the water do all the work inside your shapes, then that's the beauty of spontaneous watercolor painting directly. So hope you enjoyed that. Thanks very much. And yeah, I think that might be the last video for this year's direct watercolor, unless I get really lucky with some spare time. So I hope you enjoyed the series. I hope we see you next year for direct watercolor, and stay tuned. Thanks. Take care.